2020 is a weird year. I don't know if it's the year of 2020 vision, whatever, but just starting to see things, a pattern of unfamiliar things that we're just used to certain shit. And when it comes to sports, you're used to Spike Lee's always been at the Knicks games. You know what I'm saying? He's like the Knicks mascot. Just like Jack Nicholson has always been at the Laker games and shit. I don't know. Jack's getting a little older. He's slowing down now, but Spike Lee's he's probably the only thing that's kept the Knicks somewhat relevant over the last 20 years. They've only made the playoffs once. 2013, that was when their fans was calling them the Knicks set and shit like that. Melo was playing out of his mind. They made the playoffs, but they lost in, I think, round one. They've had a couple of bright spots like Porzingis, Kristaps Porzingis getting drafted, but the Knicks have been a fire dumpster, and Spike Lee is always rode for the Knicks. Now, with that being said, when he got kicked out of the Garden last night, do I feel sorry for him? No, I don't, and you'll hear because as soon as he got kicked out, he goes, not even 24 hours later, he goes straight to the press and goes to First Take to bash James Dolan. And James Dolan is one of the worst owners in basketball. He's probably one of the worst owners in sports, period, not just basketball. But excuse me, but Spike Lee was on First Take, and this is what he said.
Mr. Lee, you have to leave Madison Square Garden. They wanted me to leave the Garden, walk outside, down, out to 33rd Street, Employers, where I came from, walk outside, and come back on 31st Street. And I said, I'm not doing that. First of all, you scan my ticket. You can't scan a ticket twice. Also, I know that once you leave a sporting arena event, you can't come back in. So I don't trust these guys, so I'm not going for the okey doke.
Also, why are you taking a perp walk? For what?
Okey doke.
Let me just get it.
Let me finish.
Okay.
Shut up,
so
Molly.
I said, I'm not leaving. Then they said, we want you to leave the Garden. I put my hands behind my back, and I said, arrest me like my brother Charles Oakley. Then I got here. There's some brothers I know. I grew up in Fort Greene, Brooklyn, said Spike, man, brother. They said, Spike, this is some crazy stuff, but if we take you in the elevator and go to the 6th floor, not outside the Garden, go to the 6th floor, we'll walk you to your seat. I said, bet. So at halftime, Dolan comes over to me and says, we need to talk. I said, talk about what? We need to talk. I said, Mr. Dolan, I don't want to talk about nothing. I've been coming through this entrance for 28 years. Plus, Wednesday, historic event, the world's most famous arena, Madison Square Garden. They had a Broadway. They took To Kill a Mockingbird and had a performance for 18,000 New York City public kids. Amazing event. Where did I go in? The employee entrance. That was Wednesday. So if they want to change this whole new policy talk about, and at first they never said when the thing changed.
So basically, Spike's mad because he lost his privilege. The backstory is Spike, I think in a recent interview, basically said that the Knicks need to change ownership and move on from James Dolan. James Dolan is really petty and he has a big ego, just like any wealthy person, especially a wealthy white guy. And he flexes his muscles. And I remember last year he banned several Knicks fans who stated that they thought he was a terrible owner. Fans who paid their hard-earned money. You should be lucky fans are even attending these garbage-ass games. As glorious as the Garden is, and I grew up going to the Garden all the time, as glorious as the MSG is and all its luster and shit, you should be thankful that fans, you know how expensive it is to live in New York, and fans are still willing to pay money, hard-earned money, to come see your garbage-ass team. And he banned fans for basically telling the truth about his bad ownership. So when Spike went out and said the same thing, that's what happens. And then Spike loses his privilege to go through the employee entrance, and I guess Spike Lee is no longer the Knicks mascot. And Spike tried to twist it and try to make it a racial issue. By the way, you're calling him Mr. Dolan. But he tried to make it a racial issue. I'm from Fort Greene, yada, yada, yada. I'm like, dude, that didn't, like, and then bring up the Charles Oakley thing bothered me. Arrest me like my brother Charles Oakley. You never stood up for Charles Oakley. Spike Lee never stood up for Charles Oakley when that situation happened about a year or two ago when Spike Lee who's probably, I'm pretty sure, was in the arena, and Charles Oakley was escorted out because of his comments and his disagreements with James Dolan's ownership. You didn't stand with Oak Tree. Now you want to fucking bring up Charles Oakley? Come on, man. This was just Spike Lee playing victim. You know what I mean? He is a pillar in the NBA community from the celebrity wing standpoint. You know, because like I say, he has been a part of New York Knicks history over the last 30 years, just being a kid who grew up in Brooklyn, watching the Knicks, and then when he got some money and he could afford to see them live, he's done that like a diehard fan. But you're trying to twist it and make it a racial issue, when at the end of the day, it's really just James Dolan being sensitive and flexing his muscles as usual. But don't sit here and try to act like, oh, my brother Charles Oakley, like now he's your brother. Where the fuck was you at? You should have stopped going to the games and protested. This should have been a protest from Knicks fans, in my opinion, when they did that to Charles Oakley. We ain't fucking with none of these games until y'all let Charles Oakley come back. It just is a viewer. That's how you support. Now you want to fucking bring up Charles Oakley because you got embarrassed and lost your fucking privileges. You know what I mean? Like, the audacity, man.